Hello, and we are live. Happy Monday, 3 p.m. East Coast time. Welcome to our show. I'm Christian, your host, and I'm joined here by my co-host, Mr. Monte Silva. And today we're going to share with you guys. Actually, let you take it away, Monte.
Sure. So one of the things that I was excited about doing this show with you, Christian, was the opportunity to kind of peel back the curtain a little bit on things that you're working on, things that I'm working on, because I think that there's a lot of people out there that are trying to grow their business, whether they're a restaurant owner or a restaurant executive, or they're trying to get into the coaching space for restaurants or helping people. And I thought that one of the exciting things about doing this show with you is it's not a documentary, but it's an opportunity to kind of look behind the scenes and see what we're doing and see how what we're doing is growing our brands, and try to use that as an example to help others do the same, whether you're building your own restaurant brand or your own personal brand. Just kind of seeing what some other people are doing, I think would be really helpful. So I'm excited to kind of peel back what I'm doing and give people behind the scene look at what I'm doing before other people know.
Now, I love that because it will give people which want to make that pivot from operator to entrepreneur, or in my case, from chef to entrepreneur. I really like that because it allows them to hopefully learn from our mistakes and see what we do. Because there's a lot of things we did over the last few years which didn't work, and some of the stuff which does work. So I love that we can share that.
Yeah. So as we talked about last week, we'll just kind of share things that we worked on this week, and then hopefully add some value to the people listening, and to how this information can help them with their own brand, and not just be, something that's pushing what we're doing.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. So for me, just looking at overall what we did, because one of the things you and I always talk about it is doing this. I wish I would have started a podcast earlier. What is your thought around podcasting?
Well, I've been on a lot of podcasts, and I'm not a tech guy, so I never thought of myself as really good on camera. I have more of the face for radio. But as I've spent more time on people's podcasts, I've gotten a little bit better, a little more comfortable. And that repetition of doing it over and over again helped me kind of be comfortable in my own skin. And excited, this last week, we launched my first podcast ever. So
congratulations. Tell our listeners, what is it called and where can they find it?
So it's called the Restaurant Success Club podcast. And it started off as a newsletter on LinkedIn. And then we started doing LinkedIn Live events. You were on one of those shows, Christian, along with some other great people: Scott Turner, Jay Ashton, Michael Tips, Chris Frawley, Sean Walchef, a bunch of great people. And so Jay Ashton, Canada's restaurant guy, who does a lot of podcasts, I think he has 3 of the top 10 podcasts in Canada. He said, "Hey, let me produce these LinkedIn Live events into a podcast," which was great for me because I know nothing about any of that tech stuff. And so just having somebody, believe in what I'm doing and want to be part of that is really great. And, I think that whether you're running a restaurant or you're trying to do what we do, you have a team around you that you've built up, but I'm still a one-man show. And so being able to get that kind of support and help to be able to expand the reach that I have and trying to help other people is just a true testament to really building strong relationships and putting yourself out there and being vulnerable, and then allowing people to help you.
I love that. So can you share with the listeners why you started a podcast?
Yeah, so right now with the LinkedIn Live, it was live just on LinkedIn, and we wanted to really expand, there's so many restaurants and restaurant people out there trying to do new and great things, and there's very little help and support. For every 100 failed restaurants, there's somebody that could help them, and so
Yep.
just trying to work with people like you to expand that reach. I have very few select clients that I work very intently with in our coaching plan, but my focus and attention is really going deep and strategic with them. But I wanted to
Yep.
also kind of be able to help the people that I don't have time to help at that level by just
Yep.
getting the word out there. So the podcast is currently on Spotify and Apple in the audio form, and very soon it'll be on my LinkedIn page, Restaurant Success with Monte Silva.
I,
Not
I
my YouTube page.
Yeah, I love that. I like the way you have it structured. For us, we started this podcast because of Sean Walshev. So Sean said to us, Christian, I love what you guys do. In order to get your message out there, you need to do a podcast. And I felt the way you did. I don't like the way I sound on video. I don't like the way I look on video. So the more often we're doing it, the more comfortable I get. I think there's still room for improvement. But for us, it was really, how can we reach more chefs? How can we disrupt their way of thinking? Because our show is all about giving them different viewpoints, and hopefully one or maybe multiple connect with them and allows them to not just scale their career, hopefully it allows them to scale their business, their thinking, and hopefully the total direction of their life.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that you put out so much great content, between the ebooks you're doing and everything else. Me being a one-man band, I felt like this was a way that I could help as many people as possible. That's why I write the newsletter. That's why I write the column for Shift Happens in
Yeah.
FSR magazine, and that's why I'm doing this podcast. And I'm able to touch a lot of people collectively, which doesn't take up a lot of my time. It's just doing a podcast, doing a newsletter, and doing a column, and then the rest of the
Mhm.
week I can dive in deep with the clients that I work with.
Let's talk a little bit more about the book, because you said you're writing articles, you're doing all of that. So why did you start that, and what is the overall plan with that? So if somebody is here, because the first thing we talked about, they need to do a podcast, some shape or form. Listen to what Chef Walchef said. I mean, I love this. Be the show and not the commercial. I absolutely love that. So where did your writing piece come in, and where do you want to take that?
Well, when COVID happened, including being displaced as one of the people laid off, because I was the only non-family member of a restaurant group at the corporate level, and so I was the obvious choice.
Mm-hmm.
I had lots of free time on my hands, which in this industry, how often does that happen? And so I wanted to try to do something where I could help. Our industry struggled before COVID in staying open and being successful and making money and providing
Mm-hmm.
jobs. And then it got worse, after COVID. And so I really wanted to just kind of share my ideas and my thoughts, which was really good therapeutically for me to kind of work through some of that stuff, but also, to help other people. And so I just started writing a blog on LinkedIn, and that's how it started. In fact, it used to be called #Restaurateur, and it was just a blog. And then about a year ago, I changed my model for how I kind of run my business. I focused a lot on creating content, and I focused a lot on connecting with people, whether it be online or at an event. And I added to create and connect a third piece of the puzzle called collaborate. And
Mhm.
that's really when my business, exploded. So if you're out there trying to figure out how to grow your business, it's amazing when you can collaborate with people in your community and gain a wider audience. And, it's a symbiotic relationship where they're benefiting from you and you're benefiting from them, and you can really expand your reach. And so I decided to reach out to FSR Magazine and ask them if they'd be interested in me writing a weekly column. And all of
Mhm.
their articles are one-offs, with different writers, and so they had never really done a column before, and they decided to do that. And so Danny Klein and I had a conversation about that, and he liked the idea, and so I started shifting from doing this blog, and then putting it into this weekly column idea. And the reason why I came up with the name Shift Happens is because I had previously, before connecting with Danny, I had started taking my blogs and started to formulate them into two books, one of which I decided to call Shift Happens, and it really talked about the mindset changes that we needed to come up with, and then also the false beliefs that we believed for so long, and then the strategies to replace those false beliefs. And so it kind of went from blog to book idea to, hey, I have all this content, why don't I release a little bit of it at a time through a column? And so
Mhm.
um, even though I thought the book would come out, earlier, it's been really great to kind of release information to help people in a weekly setting, and then this will be part of the compilation for the book.
Love that. So if our listeners haven't done so, where can they find your book? Where do they can you find your columns?
So the columns are on FSR Magazine. I repost FSR's post every week on my LinkedIn page.
Mhm.
Um, the book is in final rewrite. Most of the book is my experience and story and kind of what I learned the hard way, and some mentors that helped me with some of my thinking. And we're adding now some more detailed data from surveys and research, just to
Yeah,
kind of support, what I wrote about.
that's awesome. And for me, I'm a big believer in the written word. I think there's still a lot of power in a book. And for us, I had the opportunity, you know my story, write books for one of the companies I work for. And then a few years ago, I said, hey, I want to start writing my own books. And we have 34. As of Friday, we will have number 35. So we just finished this week Culinary Kung Fu, which is my book, because my oldest daughter did Wushu Kung Fu. And the more I watched her do the practice in Wushu Kung Fu, I was like, oh my God, this is just like cooking. It's not doing 4,000 things one time. It's doing one thing 4,000 times until it becomes repetitious. And I think there is principles of leadership, self-leadership, becoming a finisher, and things in Kung Fu, and they very much like culinary. So I draw kind of, out of the different principles, the things which I believe would help anybody, and kind of make it a motivational book of some sort where you can not just get better in your career in this, because I think deep down I use some of those principles. And it can also help you in your career, in your business, and, in self-leadership. So I'm really excited about that. It's my first recipe or culinary book. So it, in a way, is a culinary book. Is our first book, which, it's just me talking about my experience.
So let's talk about that for a minute. So I know that you've got some full length books, and you've got some ebooks. Can you kind of talk about why you do some full length and why you do some ebooks, and
Yeah.
what your hope is in
The,
producing this content?
Yeah, good question. So my book was I wrote my first book for the love of Austria, which was my love letter back to my home country. And as I did it, I always looked at, hey, what are some of the principles I can share? And during this process, I had a few of my friends say, Christian, how the heck did you get a book done? And I said, oh, I did this, this, and this. And they said, can you teach me that? Oh, absolutely. So I had a group of 8 chefs I taught on how to write a book. And out of the 8, 7 of them did a book at the time. The number 8 didn't because he made it too complicated. And I also realized that complexity is the enemy of execution. And he wrote a book since. But then one of those guys came back and said, Christian, I want to write another book. What else did you learn? Because one of the things I always do, we have a fairly full schedule. And when I write a book and with this group, by the way, that group became a workshop. With our first workshop, we had 34 people on it. Out of the 34, 28 finished a book. And there was one guy who wrote 4 books in that time period. And that time was 12 weeks. And in 12 weeks, he got 4 books done. And not only did he 4 books, he made the first year $480,000 with his books, with some of the tips and tricks we learned. And for me, I wanted to stay. So I did some other book writing programs, but none of them had what I wanted. And you heard it. If there's something you can't find to do, you need to create it. So I created my own program. We call it the Premier Hospitality Publishing Company. And we help anybody in the hospitality industry write a book in 8 weeks or less. And by writing an hour and a half, I can help you how to get a book on the shelf. And then also what we do when we start up the first course, I sit here and says, hey, this is all the stuff I do collectively. What do you guys think I should write about? And so if I have a full schedule and I can write a book in 8 weeks, there's no excuse for anybody else to do it. So for me, I write a book every time we do the course. And we did it since 18 times. So that's where 18 of my 35 books came from. And so I write a book with it. And culinary kung fu was one of them I always wanted to do because I love the whole history and principles of our own kung fu. And I never knew how to share it. So for me, you asked me, how did this all come about? Is I honestly believe a book is the single best way for you to become a subject matter expert overnight. And it just levels you up a step. So if you want to go for a new career or promotion, and there's 2 people with the same skills, same personality, same everything, they want the same amount of money, do you think they're going to hire the guy with the book or the guy without book? I think 95% of the time will go with the guy for the book for 2 reasons. First of all, writing a book exposes who you are. Being able to finish a book, and you know that, it kind of pulls on your weaknesses. If you are a procrastinator, writing your book will do that. If you want to do it always on your own, I was there, your book will expose that. And, for me, it was the editing piece. And my wife, for 4 years, she says, you've been editing for 4 years. Why don't you just don't have somebody do it? No, I figure it out. Until I made the call. I don't think I told the story. It cost me $250. I get on the phone with this guy. 10 minutes into it, he says to me, so what is the problem? I says, the formatting. He says, okay, bring it up on the screen. See what you do? Where it says 0.3, do 0.125. Okay, you got this? Yes, and now do it. I was like, are you kidding me? So, but it's one of those things, and I think that's the beauty around that. And for me, the other thing about the book is, and why they choose the guy with the book and without the book, because they know the guy's a finisher. And we have so many chefs which are great starters, but they never finish anything. And doing this, it shows that this guy can overcome obstacles. The guy writing a book not only can overcome, he knows how to get it done. And for me, they also shows that they know how to manage their time. So if I have the opportunity to hire somebody who's published or not, I don't care if he sold any books, just finishing and having on the shelf, I know the person who became writing the book. So for me, book is the single best way to become a subject matter expert and learn a lot about yourself.
So you've written a bunch of books and you've been teaching people how to write books. What do you think the biggest obstacles are? Is it, perfectionism? Is it procrastination? Like what keeps most people from doing this?
I think there's 3. Number 1 is clarity. They're not really sure what they want to write about. That guy, which wrote 9 books since, he said, "This is my first book." I says, "Nobody will buy it. Nobody will read it because that book is really 7 books." He says, "What do you mean?" I said, "Write this, because the way people consume books today, they consume a subject, at a time. The days of the 600-page cookbooks are over. I have some of them, never even opened them. They look great on the shelf. But if I really want to learn something, I want to go with something who teaches me one thing, but, solve a problem." So that was number one. I think they don't have the clarity. The second thing is they need to have or become part of a group, because that we will do more for others than they do we do for ourselves. And being part of a group which holds you accountable and supports you will get the book done. And the third thing is they want to make it too complicated. You hear me say it all the time. Complexity is the enemy of execution. If you make it, I want to have too many fancy pictures. And in one of my books, I made a joke. I wrote a book and all the pictures in the book done with an iPhone 6. And if you can do it with an iPhone, you don't need a $40,000 camera. And those are the 3 things. Number one, I think they're not really clear what they want to write about or what the book is meant to be for. Number 2, they try to do it on their own. But we need somebody who helps us and just mentors us along. And the third thing is, I think they just need simplify. Honestly believe this, the 3 biggest holdbacks why people don't finish a book.
Right. So as a new podcaster, what advice would you have for me? You've done a lot of podcasting. What are the things that somebody like me or somebody new that's listening to this that wants to do a podcast, how can, what's the best way to do that? But also, before you answer that, why do you think every restaurant, you said every person should write a book, right? Whether it's a cookbook or something that promotes what that chef does. Why do you think everyone should have a podcast, whether you're a restaurant or not? And then what advice do you give for someone starting out with podcasting?
By the way, that's a really good question. And I think I need to get it back to you too. But I think the reason people need a podcast is there's only so much you can share in a book. And I'm a big fan of books. But if you really want to share the behind the scenes, what makes you great, what is the principles behind what we do, and really bringing along who you are, video does it much better than a written word. Because people will fall in love with who you are and how you come across. Because when they read a book, it's a good and a bad thing. The reason a book is a good thing, because when people read it, they read it in their own mind, and then they kind of believe it because they've read it themselves. But it's also, if there's something in it they don't believe in it, they kind of question it because it comes from themselves. So it's a two-sided sword. But for me, a podcast, I think they need to do it because you can share behind the scenes. You can't share that on a book. Also, the reason you need a video, you and I go live here and we finish. It's not perfect. It doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be educational. And if our listeners get 1 or 2 things to walk away from, it was worth it listening that 20 minutes, half hour, whatever the podcast is. I think those are the 2 things what really sets you apart. And why everybody should have one, because there is something you are unique, which only you can do. And if you make a burger, there's a lot of burger places out there, but you have a unique way how you blend your meats. You have a unique way how you cook it. You have a unique way how you serve it. You have a unique way or what you serve it with. In a book, a picture is great, but having it in life here and have somebody have that conversation is, much better. And if you're asking me what are the 3 things I would change from my first podcast, starting it, it's hard, and I don't know how it was for you. You have an idea, listening to a lot of podcasts, you need to sound a certain way, and it kind of takes a while to find your way. And one of my mentors, I said, I meet with him every 4 months, and now we did 4 months the podcast. He says, "How did the podcast go?" And I says, "Oh, we're picking up steam and we're doing this." He says, "You know what you need to do the next time, or even somebody, when there's nobody in the house, if you want to talk about planting onions or carrots," he says, "it doesn't really mean, walk around the house and for 20 minutes just rant about planting carrots. I was like, I never really thought about that, because he says you will get some insights and you get a rhythm going. And then eventually it's easier when you speak, because he is a speaker. He teaches people how to build a 7-figure speaker business. And he said, all you're doing is you train the mind to keep going. And the second thing I would do it with a partner, because it's a lot easier to do it with somebody than doing it by yourself. I started my first thing by myself, and it's kind of hard on yourself because I'm so critical. Oh, I see a shadow there. Oh, what is that? And people are going to wonder, what is that thing behind it? What is turning? It's just a few things in my mind. I was like, oh, maybe. Yeah. And then you're really not focusing on the value bringing across. And then just the basics. Have good sound. Video doesn't really matter. I don't believe in podcast, but have great sound, because you want to sound clear when you talk to people. So for me, those are mine. How about you? If you would start a podcast over, how did you start? What are some of the learnings you had?
Well, again, I think that me not knowing how to do a podcast, either learning or finding someone willing to do it that knows how to do it is important.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I am investing. We're transposing 8 of the first 8 LinkedIn Live events to podcast, and as I listen to them, my camera or my mic from my computer is not that great, and so I'm going to be investing in a better microphone. And then something interesting, I talked to Jensen Cummings about this, because I reached out to a few people that have podcasts like yourself and just kind of picked their brain. And one thing that Jensen did is he had the Best Served podcast for many years, where they kind of spoke about the unsung heroes in the restaurant. And I was on his show fairly early in my coaching career. And that's been on for, years now. But he said that he started realizing that there's a life expectancy of podcasts, and then they kind of die. Yep. So he's doing shorter things, mini series kinds of things. And he thinks that that's going to be kind of the wave of the future. And if you look at, what Netflix is doing, where they'll put out a series, maybe it was a movie and they turned it into a TV series, and it might be 8 episodes long, and that's season 1. And so what I'm going to be doing with this, which is really great, this Thursday we record our last live session for season 1. I'm going to do 8 episode series per season. So this Thursday, if you're on LinkedIn and you listen in, that'll be episode 8, which will be out in a few weeks, of my new podcast. And then we're going to do season 2 and start recording again. So I think that you can kind of look back over, there's my 8, what was good about it, what wasn't, shifted a little bit. Now you got a new season out, and you can alter and adjust. And it's new and it's fresh, so I think that podcasters should kind of think about that, instead of you can have a 2-year-long show called the Restaurant Success Club, but being able to break it down into, a small enough bite size that you can binge watch 6 or 8 episodes and then be excited about, what's next.
I love that.
So that's what I'm working on now.
That is awesome. And last question for you, and we talk about this all the time. How do you stay current? How do you stay connected? How do you find new projects? How do you do that? Because for me, we talked about this earlier. We do on a weekly basis, we call it the 505. And so we make 5 calls around new connections. And so we do this a week. So we do 100 calls a week. And because if we do, 100 calls a month. And if we do this, because we only do it 1 week, and then, we make about 1,000 calls. So the idea is we reach out to 5 brand new people a week. I had no relationships with, just to kind of build a connection. Then we reach out to 5 people we want to reconnect, where we feel there's a value in that connection to kind of reconnect. Then we reach out 5 people we can support in whatever they do, and we support them without asking for anything in return. Then we reach out to 5 people we can mentor, because there's people, even they don't know I talk to them, they mentor me. We never have a formal mentorship, but every time they drop some nuggets for me to help me. And then we reach out to 5 people where we can collaborate with. Because if I do this 5 times, 5 days, I have 25 people I reach out to collaborate a week. And if we scale this, it kind of adds up. So it's a little habit we started a few years ago. It kind of fell on the wayside because we kind of became busy. And I said, I need to start this back up. So we started this back up 2 weeks ago. And we have 2 new clients came out of that. We have 2 more new collaboration. One of them is with you, which came out of that. And for me, 5 over 5 is the way to go. 5 new, 5 reconnect, 5 support, 5 mentoring, and 5 collaboration calls a week. How about you?
Well, that's why you have 15 companies and and you have a support team, which is incredible. I would love to get to that point, because I think that every area that you discuss is important. It's important to pour into other people. It's important to be fed by other people. It's important to go deeper with certain people, and it's important to expand your horizons and grow a new group of people that you engage with. I think for me, what's that?
No, because it's not. So for me, the reason we're doing it, it's great the first day, easy 5, 5, 5. On day 4 or 5, it becomes harder. Who else can I call out? Who do I need to reconnect with? And for me, I go through my roster of people I have. And then sometimes I was like, oh my God, why didn't I reach out to them? Why didn't I ask for help? And just going through that. And, for me, I when I meet somebody, I rate them, not rating. For me is, who needs to know about them? How can I help them promote it, and how can we collaborate? So for me, I write down, hey, Monte, he's a 1 and a 2, because, that's what we want to do. Now it's a 3 because we're collaborating. And then for me, I started this system a few years ago. And then when I go through it, I was like, oh, I feel bad that I haven't made that connection yet. And being on top of that, it makes me also, when I hang up on the call, same thing. What did I learn? What did they learn? Who do I need to connect them? Who do I need to put them in contact with? Because there's so many great industry, not just shakers, people which do amazing work in our industry. And we just need to give them more eyeballs.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, I'm still kind of on the create, connect, and collaborate. I'm still a single entrepreneur, solo entrepreneur. I am outsourcing some of my website stuff to someone, and I'm now have a producer that's going to do the podcast show, and then we're doing this project together, which I love. I'm partnering with Maverick Theory on being one of the coach and consultants that they are that's in their stable, and promoting, helping me promote and get my name out there so I could help more people. Collaborating with FSR Magazine, and in not only the column but also in speaking at their conference in September. I was on the co-chair for the People Education Tract at BRE, and was a speaker for Bar and Restaurant Expo. So for me, it's really, how can I collaborate? I'm working on a project with Scott Turner and Matt Rolfe that'll be out later this year. And so for me, it's really about continuing to create content that can help people, connecting at things like online and also at conferences, and then finding ways that I can go really deep and adding value to my clients because of the relationships that I have, that then become their circle of influence. And at some point, I'm going to try to do the 5-5-5-5-5 thing. That's
Yeah,
awesome. But, on my
I
own, I think that this is about what I can handle right now.
yeah, I always encourage people to do the 5-5 as soon as you can, even if it's 3-3-3, because reaching out and having 5 people, a week or a day, whatever you want to do it, is, hey, I find them this amazing what you do. And reconnecting is, my team laughs because when I leave messages, I always tell them that I feel like I work harder on this relationship than they do. That always gets me a call back, And then when the support thing, I learned this from Joe. You remember my old partner, Joe, which passed? Joe finished every single call. How can I support you? What can I do for you? And for me, I found it amazing. It was another single call, even with me. And sometimes we spent 9 hours on Zoom during COVID, and he finished up. So good. What can I do for you? And for me, I just was always blown away by that. And then I follow people which do some stuff, and then I reach out to them and say, hey, I love what you do. How can I support you? And not just support you. How can I mentor you around it? There's a few things I learned. I think this could benefit you. And then with the collaboration calls too, I admire what you do. I think together we can do great things. And, you were kind enough to say yes to this show. But doing this, it's for free. All it takes is an hour to a day. Sometimes it takes less than that. Is the single biggest impact for me. And that's why I loved a Clubhouse so much, because it allowed you to do all of that in one place. And I'm not 100% in love what Clubhouse became. I just loved what it was. But if there's anybody listening and they want to scale their career, they want to go from an entrepreneur or operator the way you are to, being an author, being a speaker, being a coach, do that. And the first guy call they need to make is to you. And then even if you want to scale your career, the first person they need to call is you. If my business struggles, the first call should be to you. And if people didn't get anything else from today's show, I want them to look up Monte Silva. He's amazing what he does. He's the best kept secret in the restaurant industry. You guys need to hit him up while you can still afford him, because there's going to be a very short period of time, and I'm not kidding, people will not be able to afford him and afford you. So guys, reach out, pick his brain. He's absolutely amazing what he does. And he's not only very good in what he does, he's an amazing human being. And I'm really excited to do the show with you, Monte.
Well, thank you. That's very humbling to hear you say, and I appreciate your friendship and what you offer to our industry. And I try to recuperate. I try to reiterate what you do for me back to you, and sometimes I feel like that's a little skewed in my benefit, but thank you for those kind words.
No, you know what? It's amazing. And there's one other benefit doing the 5/5, because when you start, hey, how can I support you? The conversations become really easy. My restaurant is really struggling. Hey, let me make an introduction to Monte. Hey, I need some marketing. Let me put you in touch with Mackenzie from my team. She's amazing at what she does. And for me, that call around number 3, the support call, is really a connection call, because we all know somebody who can help somebody.
Yeah.
And the mentorship calls I struggle with the most, because not a lot of people accept advice, and sometimes I kind of back off because I'm not sure if it's welcome. So for me, I think out of all of them, that's the hardest. It's much easier to ask to collaborate, to ask you, hey, how can I mentor you? But for me, single biggest impact anybody can make to start, scale, or level up their career, business, and their community.
Yeah, I think that one reason why I put out a lot of content is because the mentorship side of things, unless someone's hiring you to coach them, if someone's paying you money, they're very likely to listen to what you have to say.
Yeah.
But if you're just, you're mentoring someone to help them and there's no transaction, I think it's very hard. It would be very frustrating for me to give advice, like throw somebody a lifeline and then watch them drown because they didn't listen.
Yeah.
And so I throw the information out there, and then if they don't take it, they don't take it. And
I love that.
Yeah.
So maybe I need to rename number 4, which is not my mentorship call, which is my motivation call then, because sometimes the call are really simple. I know you can do that, and I'm here to believe in you. And you know what? If I'm the person because you think you don't deserve it, let me tell you, Monte, I'm here. I give you permission to succeed. I give you permission to be successful. I give you permission to ask for that. And sometimes it's that. Maybe mentorship is not the right word. See, I learned something. I make a note. And for our listeners, I hope you get something out of this. And you also, I hope that you know this is sincere. And the reason I asked Monte to do this with me, because there's a lot of people out there preaching some really good advice, and they have never done it themselves. And the reason I love this, I struggled. I know you did. I did all of the things I'm talking about because I struggled through it. Sometimes somebody helped me, and sometimes I did it the old-fashioned way because hard work will outwork or outperform knowledge all the time. Just work a little bit more, get up an hour earlier, stay an hour late kind of thing. And if anybody wants to scale their business, anybody wants to scale their career, there's some really great conversations we're having here, which can help them do exactly that.
Yeah. Well, thanks. This was great. I get stuff out of every time we have a conversation, so I appreciate being on the show.
Same here. And so for our listeners, if you haven't done so, make sure you like this episode, share it with a friend or a coworker, somebody who's struggling and needs to hear this. Also, if you haven't done so, please go to disruptivechef.club, which is our private community where we go in before we go on these calls. By the way, these calls are never planned. We always say, hey, what are we going to talk about? Hey, we're talking about what we learned this week. So in our private community, the disruptivechef.club, we got to take some advice. If somebody says, hey, help me with this, we can talk about it. If somebody said, hey, I really want to know more about that, we can talk about it. Also, this is our private community. When we do something brand new, or if we do some really cool stuff, we do giveaways in there every month. Come into this community. It's an amazing group of people which think differently and want to expect more out of their life and more out of their career. I think you will find it's a really good group to be a part of. With that, I want to say thanks for being here. Any closing words from your side today, Mr. Monte?
No, get out there and make it happen.
Absolutely. And if you struggle, you know who to call. With that, thanks, everybody.